I wish to sincerely, on behalf of the management of the CDC, I wish to thank ERIA for co-organizing, co-hosting this private dialogue, this public-private dialogue. It's the fourth one, and it's about Cambodia. We are very privileged. I have looked at the program, and I was very pleased to see that in section 1 as in section 2, there will be representative of the private sector that will speak. And this is why I have immediately accepted when ERIA proposed us this dialogue. When I saw public-private dialogue, I accepted immediately. Why? As you know, the CDC is a government institution. The CDC is an IPA, Investment Promotion Agency. In order to fulfill properly our mission, I am of the view that we should engage as much as possible with the private sector. Starting in December 1999, we were at that time all very young. More than 20 years ago, in Cambodia, we have started the first government-private sector forum. It's a big meeting shared by the Prime Minister himself, with all cabinet ministers attending, all governors, and over 300 representatives from the private sector. In that meeting, representatives of the private sector were raising issues that they wish the government to find solutions. This mechanism that we call in short G, government private PSF, has been instrumental to create an enabling environment in Cambodia. We do have law and regulation. Legal framework is important. But more broadly, as you know, business environment is not only law. I mentioned this. It's just an encouragement for panelists this morning. Please express your views. We are here for that. We have 2 hours, and you can even drink tea or coffee. I will not touch technically, specifically on RCEP. Many friends and colleagues after me will elaborate on it. And I hope that you have done your homework. But for participants to be on a level playing field, allow me to give you some background, historical background of Cambodia. And it will explain why Cambodia is Cambodia today and why we have such and such policies. Unfortunately, you have heard, all of you have heard about our terrible past that end in theory with the signing of the peace agreement in Paris in October 1991. In July 1993, first ever election, and in October 1993, first government after 3 decades of civil war, first government, 1993. At that time, Cambodia was at ground zero. Don't talk about economic development. We didn't have electricity, we didn't have road, such and such. As early as 1994, August, we have adopted the law on investment in the Kingdom of Cambodia. At that time, it was a kind of revolution, if the word is not too strong. Our law was a single law that can be applied to both domestic investors and foreign investors. You may forget that at that time, many countries in the region were enforcing 2 different laws, one for the nationals and one for the foreign investors. This is, ladies, gentlemen, friends, to tell you that as early as 1994, we believe in openness, in liberalization. We believe on the private sector as the engine of growth. Can you believe me that in 1994 Cambodia allowed investment in all sectors, including telecom, banking, insurance, agriculture, to foreigners? Do you know that not only those sectors were open to foreigners, but they can undertake those projects 100% without any local participation requirement. More open, more liberal than that, you couldn't find at that time. There is a reason. We were post-war country, small economy, and we want to stand up from ground zero. We have to rely, if we are to grow, if we are to create jobs and employment, we have to produce and export. Who are the producers? We were counting on domestic producers, but also on foreign investors. This is why our law in 1994 was so open. Please, gentlemen, come to Cambodia, invest in Cambodia, and grow with us. First point that I like to make, 1994, the law. Soon after we have this government, our endeavor, the endeavor of the government was to be a member of ASEAN. Back to 1993, only 6 ASEAN members. Later on, in 1997, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Laos joined. And Cambodia was the last one to join the family in December 1999. It was a strong wish to be part of ASEAN. It is our policy to be integrated into the region and into the global community. It is why, after ASEAN, we worked hard from 2000 to 2003 to be admitted as member of WTO. Admitted by the Working Party in July 2003, but officially at the ministerial meeting in Cancun only in 2004 after we ratified. So official membership 2004. I mentioned this, ASEAN, WTO, in order for me to tell you that Cambodia has always and will always uphold integration, regional integration, global integration, and multilateralism. Here we are. Mr. Gross may be a bit impatient. It's a long introduction, but it's bringing us to RCEP. It's about integration. It's about multilateralism. You see, 2 weeks ago, what happened in Geneva? Ministerial meeting, WTO, and still the system has problem. This is why we count. We, ASEAN member countries, plus 5 other partners, namely China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand. We wish, despite all the horrible news that you read and I hear every day since the beginning of this year, the Ukraine war adding to the disruption of COVID, that add to the turbulence caused by Revolution 4.0, all this is the current ambiance, and it is why it is imperative, it is important to all of us to make the implementation of RCEP officially implemented it, and its entry into force was since 1st January. Let's move, and I am very glad to reiterate, to recall that RCEP is at the origin an initiative from ASEAN countries, and as a matter of fact, expecting that we will get out from this terrible virus pandemic, ASEAN has prepared an ASEAN comprehensive recovery framework. In that recovery framework, there are 5 broad strategies. The third one deals with maximizing the potential of intra-ASEAN market and broader economic integration. This strategy, number 3, is very detailed, from A to Z, and increasingly there is a specific mention of, in this strategy, I read the signing and early entry into force of RCEP. So just to tell you that ASEAN, Cambodia as an ASEAN member, and today I'm a representative of the country that is the chair of ASEAN. ASEAN is strongly committed, both ASEAN, including Cambodia, strongly committed to make a smooth, effective implementation of RCEP. Provisions have been elaborated, documents have been signed, and I know a lot of things to read, but I urge friends from the private sector to look at it and to take advantage of it in a positive way, because there are new things, excellent things for all of us. For East Asia, more developed economies, but also for middle income countries. There are provisions that are very encouraging for the smooth implementation. You all agree with me that the common rule of origin is something that we all welcome. Apart from East Asia, many countries in ASEAN in the region still have small enterprise, and I'm pleased that in RCEP there are provisions dealing with SMEs, upgrading skills such and such. I will end my long introduction, because other colleagues are impatient, by telling you that Cambodia has prepared the ground for a smooth implementation of RCEP. Let me tell you that in 2015, we have adopted the Industrial Development Policy, IDP in short, 2015-2025, aiming at what? Diversification, more value add, higher skill. More recently, last year, we have adopted the Cambodia Digital Economy and Society Policy Framework. We know that skill, quality of human resource is an issue in Cambodia. So we have adopted the National Employment Policy 2015-2025. At the same time, we have adopted the National Tibet Policy 2017-2025. Some investors, not all, still complain about energy price in Cambodia. We have adopted, or we have drafted, the National Energy Efficiency Policy 2021-2030. Last but not least, talking about RCEP, talking about integration, regional integration, we have to talk about connectivity, about better logistics. And Cambodia has prepared the master plan on intermodal connectivity and logistic system. This is, in brief, not all, to tell you that on the government side, Cambodia has drawn lessons from past experience, our own past experience. We recognize, we acknowledge some weaknesses, and those policies and strategies that I have mentioned aim at improving the situation in order for the private sector to give life to AEC, the ASEAN Economic Community, that we have all agreed that we wish to have a single market, a single production base. This is about AEC. And now, more broadly, we have done this homework in order to be able to implement what we have all agreed with the signing of the RCEP and the implementation since January this year. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Sok Chenda Sophea, not just for the warm and kind words about ERIA, but also for sharing with us how Cambodia's own history and emphasis on regional integration can be seen through the story of investment, going back to the first investment law. And of course, regional economic integration, as Mr. Hachiyama said, is one of the principles, the directives and the mandates of ERIA, and what we hope to support. So thank you very much, and we certainly appreciate your presence for co-hosting this event with us, and we look forward to further events together. Before moving on to session one, may I also thank on behalf of ERIA all the speakers and panelists for joining us today. We very much appreciate your participation, as well, of course, to all those who have registered and are watching this event. I hope this today's discussion will be helpful to you all, and may I wish you all a fruitful discussion over the next couple of hours. Thank you. And then yes.
Thank you for allowing me to add something. I didn't forget, I mentioned the genesis of our investment law in 1994. But more recently, and this is what is of interest for all participants today, is the new investment law that you have mentioned that have been adopted in October 2021. This law, I don't hear so far somebody complaining about it, but I didn't want to touch on it because I have a very capable colleague in session one who will elaborate on it. So just to tell you, we are very proud of it. I would love to talk on it because I slept on it for years, but I would give the floor to the younger generation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, and of course we look forward to the presentation by your colleague, Dr. Sasanera, during session one. So on that, may I hand over to Mr. Sven Kallebo, who will be the moderator for today's event. Sven, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Excellency, having me today, my respect. Excellency, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. So, for those of you who just joined us, welcome to the public dialogue on Unpacking the RCEP Agreement for Cambodian Businesses. This is number 4 in our series of 5 dialogues, following our previous dialogues on e-commerce, trading goods, rule of origin, and payment services earlier this year. And if you like this event, I'm happy to tell you that our next and last event in this series will take place in July, together with the General Department of Customs and Excise, and focus
on comments and conclusions from today's discussion. So, Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. I will be brief. First, I would like to thank Clint for his excellent summary. I don't have to say anything else because he has done the job already. For this excellent job, he deserves answer to his question. He raised 2 questions. The first one was about the agreement on avoidance of double taxation. I totally understand that whenever there are bilateral or multilateral investment agreement, along that, we should have avoidance of double taxation agreement. Just, and you know well, the FDI know well, before we didn't have any such agreement. Then, as a priority, because again, we want to be a good member of the ASEAN family, we start by negotiating those agreements on the avoidance of double taxation with ASEAN members. This was the first step. Then we move to those countries with whom we have signed bilateral investment treaties. This was the rationale. And very rightly, as you point out, and I will, after this meeting, call my colleague from the General Tax Department to tell him that look at the list of RCEP members and do the job with your colleague with whom we didn't negotiate and sign yet. First answer. Second answer, enactment of the implementing sub-decree. Very, what I say, legitimate request or questions. I wish to tell you that CDC has drafted already, and we have sent it to the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And I saw recently a post in the Facebook. The ministry is working actively on our draft. Forgive us for taking a bit time, but as you know, it deals with revenue. This is an important matter. Tax revenue. Incentive is about not collecting tax. And let's be positive. The private sector has waited for a while for the law on investment. But at the end, after years of waiting, what we get, you would agree, is a nice baby. So give us a bit time in order to prepare for you and for the sake of further economic development of Cambodia, a sub-decree that is up to date, that better than this would be able to help us weather the storm. You see, the law on investment, CDC has finalized it by end of 2019. Fortunately, we didn't have the cabinet approval. Fortunately, we didn't adopt it before COVID, because with the disruption that COVID brought, though that law would not be relevant. So I would never say thanks to COVID, but because of COVID, we have been revisiting our draft, and what we get help us really to adjust to the new normal. In this period, that I seek your understanding and patience, and because we wish the implementing sub-decree to follow the same path to help us moving. And it's about the topic of today is about providing a legal environment that will bring further investment to Cambodia. I thank you for your attention.
His Excellency Sok Chenda Sophea, thank you on behalf of all attendees at this public-private dialogue for your direct and candid responses. I'm sure everyone will be very pleased to know that things are in place, that there will be pushing forward the idea of the taxation treaties, as well as having an update about the sub-decree. May we also thank you once again for your participation, honouring us today with your presence. This is obviously a first conversation, a first public-private dialogue